Good morning. I'm going to call to order the quarterly board meeting of the Kentucky Public Pensions Authority, and we're going to begin with a legal opening statement.
Yes, sir. This is a regular meeting of the Kentucky Public Pensions Authority Board. This meeting is being broadcast via video teleconference pursuant to Kentucky Revised Statute Section 61.826 and may be viewed by the public at the Kentucky Public Pensions Authority offices located at 1260 Louisville Road, Frankfort, Kentucky. It is also being broadcast to the public via Facebook. If you are speaking and not appearing by video, please identify yourself before talking. Please ensure that you are on camera when making or seconding a motion or casting a vote. In the event the video or audio broadcast is interrupted, we will attempt to reestablish a connection. If a connection cannot be reestablished within 30 minutes, the meeting will be adjourned and rescheduled to another date.
Okay, roll call, please.
Yes, sir. Mr. Piercy?
Here.
Dr. Carver?
Here.
Mr. Cheatham?
Here.
Dr. Hackbart? Ms. Hampton?
Here.
Mr. Lane?
Here.
Mr. O'Mara?
Here.
And Mr. Summers?
Here.
Thank you.
Okay, we have a quorum. My understanding is there's no public comment, correct?
That is correct.
Okay. Next item is approval of minutes from the June 26th meeting, and I'll seek a motion.
So moved. Second.
Any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? And that motion is adopted. Next item is the KPPA Audit Committee report, and I think Kristen's with us in the boardroom.
Good morning. The Audit Committee met on August 26th, and we have included two reports that were presented at that meeting, and we are requesting that the board ratify the acceptance of those audits and authorize KPPA staff to implement the corrective action. I've included them. I can go over them or answer any questions, or if there are no questions, I'm asking for that vote.
Move approval to adopt 2025-9 and 2025-11 audit reviews of accounts payable process and the accrual process.
I'll second that.
Okay, any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? And that motion is adopted. Thank you, Kristen.
Thank you. We also,
And
we
go
had,
ahead, sorry.
I was good. We had some other items that we've included on that memo that were informational only, but I believe Mike Land is here. He's going to speak to the external audit.
Yeah, actually, I think this engagement letter needs to be approved by the KPPA board. So this is the engagement letter between KPPA and our new external auditor, Eide Bailey. And I think statutorily, KPPA is the one who chooses the external auditor for the ACFRs that we are auditing. And so this is the letter that is typically done before June, but with a new RFP in place and the timing related to that, it took a little longer for us to finalize it. And it was finalized in July, but basically it just kind of goes through the auditor's responsibilities and what they are doing the audit under, what management's responsibilities are, as well as what the timing of fees related to this specific audit are. So that's in there starting on page 35. And it has been signed off by myself and Leland Miller, who is one of the partners with Eide Bailey. This did go through extensive legal review prior to finalization, as well as executive management review. So happy to answer any questions you have, but the audit is progressing. It is ongoing. They've been on site one time. They've been meeting with various groups and understanding the internal control process, being that this is their first year auditing the KPPA's systems. There's typically the normal first year audit work that is a little bit more intensive than someone who's been doing it for a few years. So I'll leave it at that. And I would like a motion to approve Eide Bailey as the KPPA external auditor for the ACFRs, if you don't mind.
We'll take that motion.
Move approval to accept Eide Bailey as the external auditors.
And I will second.
Okay,
And I
any
ha-
discussion? Go ahead.
I do have one question.
Go ahead.
Mike, how much have they talked to the prior year auditors, not Blue, but the state, about their processes? Just kind of curious.
You know, I don't think they had a meeting with the APA. I mean, Blue was our auditor last year, and they did have a couple meetings with Blue. They've reviewed Blue's work papers. To
Okay.
my knowledge, I don't think they've reached out to the APA related to their audit process.
Okay, thank you.
Any further questions or discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor?
Aye.
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 Opposed? And that motion is adopted. Thank you, Kristen and Mike.
Thank you.
And we are ready for the next item. Mike's up again with the FY 26 to 28 biennium budget.
Yes, this is a memo asking for a few things from the KPPA board today. There was an ad hoc committee or a work group formed that has met a few times related to our submission of the biennium budget request for KPPA. That biennium budget request is due on October 1, and statutorily, the KPPA board needs to approve that request prior to it being submitted by KPPA. So in general, there are 3 recommendations. One is to approve the biennium baseline budget amount of $50,115,600, and then also approve the capital planning submission of $75 million, which has $15 million in fiscal year 28, $50 million in fiscal years 29 and 30 in total, not $50 million each, and $10 million in fiscal years 31 and 32 in total. In addition, the budget work group had several good discussions about the potential of requesting an additional budget request, which we call an ABR, and this is to account for some additional funding above and beyond the $50 million in the baseline, and we are asking for $750,000 in fiscal year 27, as well as $1.5 million in fiscal year 28. The one thing I will stress here is that these are all restricted funds. They come out of the trusts. They are not general fund monies. And this is really just permission to spend. We are asking for permission from the budget office to spend restricted fund monies, our own monies. And if we don't utilize all of that money, of course, it will not be spent. But we felt it was better to ask ahead of time and see if that gets granted, and then manage it fiscally responsible as we do for all of our expenditures related to the trusts, and go from there related to the biennium process. I do have a little PowerPoint presentation that walks through this a little more if we want to scroll down, and I'll do that. Yeah, so that slide is just the title slide. The next one is the members who participated in the work group and other staff. And then the next slide shows you what the KPPA board approved as our admin budget for this current fiscal year. The fiscal year that we are in, we approved $49.9 million. The budget office also added $145,900 to that amount once they were able to calculate the impact of the various personnel cabinet assessments specifically related to IT job classification. So they added another $145,000 to the budget that we approved. And then that gave us the $50,115,000. That $50,115,000 is the same amount that has been carried forward by the budget office related to baseline budget amounts for fiscal year 27 and 28. So Cher, if you scroll down to the next slide, I have a typo in there for the 50. It's supposed to be 50 million, not 51 million. 50,115,600,000. So that's the baseline amount. That is our current fiscal year 26 budget. That's been carried forward as our baseline for 27 and 28. And within that $51 million or that $50 million, there is a baseline amount for salary, FICA, retirement, health, etc. That's $38 million, and that is provided to us by the budget office. They look at all of our approved positions. They calculate the salaries related to those positions, including vacant positions. They calculate the FICA and the retirement related to those positions, and they give us that personnel number. Then we are then we utilize the remaining amount of that to fund our operational costs. So legal expenses, IT related costs, etc. And again, as stated before, all of this administrative expenses related to this biennium budget come from restricted funds. So with that, the next slide kind of breaks down the chart at a high level. That breaks down the money that we're going to request from the budget office through the biennium budget process. So current approved budget, $50 million. Baseline submission, $50 million for fiscal year 27-28. We're going to ask for an additional budget request of $750,000 in fiscal year 27, $1.5 million in 28. That gives us a total budget request of $50 million. 0.8 in 27 and 51.6 million in 28. There are some comparisons there showing you what the difference is between our current admin budget and what we are requesting, and basically it's the additional budget request. I did want to give you a little bit more information on the capital project that we are submitting. So if you go to the next screen, Sherry, this is the breakdown that we provide to the Capital Planning Advisory Board. This is the project that we anticipate will be recommended to KPPA when we complete our IT assessment. We already know that the baseline language that supports the main system, which we call the START system, which is our pension administration system, is no longer being supported. It is over 20 years old, and we anticipate that we will replace that system over the next 6 years. This is the budgeted amount that we've put together related to that implementation of a new system or a modernization of the current system. So in the first biennium, which is 27 and 28, we've anticipated a $15 million spend related to the planning of that system modernization. And then in the capital planning project, we also put $50 million for the second biennium, and then $10 million in the third biennium to close out that project. So in the biennium budget request, this $15 million is what's being presented through that. They will also look at the capital planning software system that we've submitted all of this capital plan into and see the entirety of the project. But the $15 million is what's going in this biennium request for capital projects.
And Mike, can you tie the ABR back to this project? Obviously, that's support of staff, not the capital side.
Correct. So the ABR, so what we are already doing as an agency right now is we are preparing for this implementation. So what that means is we are prioritizing current IT projects, trying to complete them as we can. As this project comes on, we will need to reallocate resources from current projects to this project. In doing that, we are going to attempt to fully staff our entire CAP, which is 285 persons. We are going to ask staff members to work overtime. We are going to reallocate other resources such as contractors, etc., to current projects and this project. So even though this isn't going to start until 28, we are already in the process of planning for this process and for this project, and it is causing KPPA to a little bit realign some of their resources and prepare for this implementation. Does that help, Ryan?
Yes, thank you.
So how much of this was a decision by Rebecca to retire?
Actually, Rebecca told me that she is very sad she's going to miss this because this is her lifeblood. She loves these things.
Yeah, I like a good project. I love them.
Yeah.
So so the ABR that we are asking for is to help KPPA sustain our current processes and prepare for this capital project that's coming. And that's what we're going to request with the budget office. We do have a meeting with the budget office tomorrow to help us finalize our ABR request and to put our best foot forward in presenting that to the legislator. So basically, when we submit this biennium budget request, it goes to LRC, it goes to the budget office. I think the governor's group puts together their own budget, the legislature puts together their own budget. They look at it during the general session, and magically we get a budget amount that we have permission to spend. And that'll come out after the legislative session and will be effective July 1, 2027.
Any other questions or discussion? And if not, I'll seek a motion to approve the 26 to 28 biennium budget as presented.
So moved.
Second.
Okay, any discussion?
Only
Seeing
like,
none?
I'd like
Go
to
ahead.
add, I think it's good planning, and thank you all for all the hard work.
Yes, I would like to echo the work that Mike and his group put together. Clear presentations, good conversation. It was a good process. I think he did a good job, and his staff supporting him as well.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Okay. Any further discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? And that motion is adopted. Mike, thanks for that. And you're up again for the administrative budget to actual.
Yes, so again, this is the 25 administrative budget that ended June 30, 2025. This has grown a little bit stale, being that we're near the end of September, but this has been presented to both the K and the C boards and gone through in detail. So the summary notes that are in here, I will just touch base on them and leave it at that. But basically, why does that say third quarter? Yeah, those notes are stale also. I apologize for that. Give me just a second here to get my other notes up here. But basically, let me let you know that for the year ended June 30, KPPA spent nearly $35 million, which was 1.8 million or 5% below the annual budget amount of nearly 37 million. That's in the personnel category line item, the top line item right there. There were a few line items that were above and below budget. The salaries, wages, and overtime were nearly $1 million below. Employer paid retirement was 700,000 below. FICA and employer sick leave were below by 162,000. That was offset by employer paid health insurance being over budget by $225,000. The legal contracts right there were $744,000 below budget for the year overall. And then the additional personnel items such as auditing, actuarial services, medical, and other, overall they were under budget by $1.2 million for the fiscal year. The operational total is also under budget by $830,000 for the year. That was driven by IT being about $640,000 below budget and us not completing our Louisville office. So we didn't have those expenses that we were budgeting for, as well as travel being about $140,000 below. So I apologize for the comments below that being from the third quarter, but what I just went through verbally were the fourth quarter comments related to this chart.
Questions or comments?
No, I
Mike,
think
is
you
that-
did a good job in committee, and it stayed the same.
Anything else? Mike, is that it for you?
I believe so.
Okay. Thank you very much. And we're up to the investment department update. And I think, is Mr. Gilbert handling this?
No, it's me. Hi, Keith. How are you?
Oh, Anthony. Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
Yeah. Yes. I'm just here gonna update you guys on what's been going on with investments. I think most of you guys were on those meetings as the county and state boards both have met over the past month. There are really two main topics of review this time. The first one is a new private equity investment recommendation, which is an additional investment with Strategic Value Partners in their latest fund, Fund 6. We have been investors with them since 2018 in Funds 4 and 5, as well as a toll road continuation vehicle last year. So that was approved by both boards for a total of $175 million. We are in the documentation process with the hope for closing that in the month. So, and then if we go to the next page, please. Yeah, so here another main thing was talking about the results for the fiscal year, which were very strong. Obviously things recovered since Liberation Day. And so you can see that the pension and insurance composites Both were over 11.5%, beating their benchmarks for the fiscal year, and obviously the actual actuarial rate of return, assumed rate of return as well. So that total outperformance was around $187 million for the pension portfolios and $33 million for the insurance portfolios. So that's around $220 million in total impact. So, and then we can go to the next page. I mean, a lot of this has been covered in there, but we can just say some of the major outperformers were real return and specialty credit. Some of those, and then also the real estate market has still been a little weak. Most of our core funds were able to outperform. Our core funds were able to outperform the benchmark, which is only at around 1% for the year. So, that's what we can say about that in terms of allocations. All plans are almost within 1% of their target allocations by asset class. The one underweight that is still a little bit lower is private equity. We've haven't seen as many good risk return opportunities there. And so especially we've found more to do, I'd say, in real return and credit. And that's where some of the recommendations have come from. So happy to take any questions if you guys have any, or yeah.
Questions or comments for Anthony? Look like none, Anthony. Thank you very much.
Sure, of course. Thank you, guys.
Okay, we're up to the ad hoc regulation committee report. Nathan, are you taking this?
Yes, I'll take this. Good morning. The ad hoc regulation committee met on September 16th and reviewed a very busy agenda and forwarded all these regulations on to the full board for final approval. The first regulation was 105 KAR 1445 relating to trustee elections. Kristen's group took the lessons that they learned from the CERS election last year and had some recommended changes relating to deadlines that we believe will save money and staff resources in the long term and still comply with the statute. So that was the impetus for those changes to that regulation. Kristen, is there anything you wanted to add on that?
No, I think that pretty much covers it. Yeah, it was just some adjustments to deadlines to help with the staffing issues.
The next regulation was 105 KAR 1020 relating to reciprocal programs. LRC, and back in 2017, implemented a requirement that all regulations have to be reviewed every 7 years in order to remain current. If they aren't reviewed and certified or reviewed and updated, then the regulation expires. So the first batch of regulations was recertified in 2019, and when House Bill 484 was passed for separation back in 2021, it provided non-codified language that these regulations would remain in effect even after separation. So we have approximately 15 regulations that are set to expire over the next fiscal year. And so Carol especially is very busy updating these and codifying any statutory changes that have taken place, as well as updating the language to reflect the 484 separation. So 105 KR 1020 relates to our reciprocity programs with TRS, judicial, legislative. It updates the language to reflect statutory changes. We're working with Aaron's team to finalize some changes to one of the forms incorporated by reference. And so that form that is submitted to LRC may look slightly different than the form in your materials, but not materially so. The next regulation was 105 KAR 1150 relating to installment purchase procedures. This is when a member goes to purchase service, they have the option, rather than paying a lump sum up front, to have it paid through payroll deductions, and this updates the procedures. Again, as with 020 and all the remaining regulations, these regulations are being implemented as written, so there's no substantive changes from the way we are currently doing things. 105 KR 1300. This was a regulation that was also set to expire this fiscal year, and that related to the determination of service credit for classified employees. This was updated to reflect how we are implementing that statute. 105 KR 1340 relating to rollovers and transfers of contributions and other plans. This is when a member may have, say, a deferred comp account or other plan, and this provides the procedures for how they can do that and not take the tax hit on that. And so, again, that is being implemented as written, and that was also one that was set to expire. 105 KR 1350, collection of account under $1,000 by next of kin. If a member has an account balance here with us under $1,000, there's a statutory procedure where the next of kin can, after the member's death, collect the amount owed without going through a probate or formal estate procedures. And they do that by filling out a affidavit with us. The substantive change there is we updated the gross estate amount to match the maximum that a individual can have and still go through the informal estate processes under the statute, and so we're hopeful that this will allow more next of kin to follow the informal procedures here rather than having to go through the added expense of going through probate. There were two regulations that did not require updating, and they are 105 KR 1320, proration of service credit, and 105 KR 1345, relating to rollovers and transfers of contributions to other plans. This is when a member wants to roll over to another plan. This required a technical amendment and changing distributes to distributee. Can't imagine with it just rolls off the tongue, so can't imagine why that typo got in there. So those are the regulations that the committee referred to you all for full approval, and I think we're seeking one motion to approve all of those.
I was at my very first meeting, and I will say, although it was a big agenda, you all went through it fairly fast in explaining things, so thank you. So I'll make the motion to approve.
Second.
Okay, any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? And that motion is adopted. Thank you very much, Nathan. We are up to the KPPA meeting calendar for 2026. And I'm on the agenda for this, and I don't have a lot to say about it. Sherry, are we just looking for a motion to approve it? Is that all we're doing?
That's correct.
Okay. So that's really all I have to say. I'm looking for a motion to approve the 2026 meeting calendar. We'll make this short and sweet.
So moved. Second.
Okay, any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? And that motion carries. Thank you very much. Strategic plan. Rebecca is making what I believe is going to be her last appearance at one of these meetings, so break a leg, not literally.
The plan, that is the plan. So this is the 2024, 2028. It's really 4.5 fiscal year plan. You approved this in June. The basis of this plan was what we refer to as the 6 mandates. So that was our standard of excellence for staff. We have a leadership academy that's been going all year long. So people who are not yet in leadership, but who are interested in it, kind of a mentoring program, not kind of, exactly a mentoring program and education. And Ryan had the great idea, which I thought was terrific, to have them look at the 6 mandates that hadn't been looked at in 5 or 6 years and update where needed. So we now have 5 core values. So we're dropping mandates. We went from 6 to 5. So if you look at, the left side of that page, starting with member. So they have 5 areas: member, investment, transparency, culture, and improvement. I won't read those to you, but those changed. They're not significant changes, but we did need to update the strategic plan based on the new core values as opposed to the 6 mandates. So I apologize, there's no red line for this. It's the tool that we use to create this very nice, Communications does it for us, this nicer version. But basically, go to the next page, please, Sherry. We still talk about it being cyclic. The bottom of this page is the 4 areas of focus. None of those have changed. Next page, Sherry. The next 4 pages then go one area of focus by the next and look at the initiatives. We did take this opportunity to tweak a couple of these, especially in governance. If you'll go down a couple more pages there, Sherry, to governance. I believe that's 209 in board books. These read a little bit like board items to do, and that's not what we wanted. So we tweaked these to make sure that it's very clear that these are the way that staff handles things. Operational decisions will include legislative changes, those kinds of things. So those are the changes that we gave you. And then, next page, Sherry, we had called, so for every fiscal year within the 4.5 fiscal years, for every fiscal year we called it an implementation now. We are now calling it a business plan because implementation seems to be a mouthful and nobody remembers what it is. So we talked to some other folks who were doing this, and business plan was a term that other people were using, and we liked that. This is a living document that changes quite a bit. So it is also not redlined. It has changed multiple times, but I figure if we're giving you the overall strategic plan, we'll give you these updates as well. But it's been updated to reflect the changes to the larger strategic plan. That's all I'll say, unless you guys have specific questions.
You did it. You did so well. We have no questions. Thank you very much, Rebecca. And again, best of luck to you in your retirement.
Appreciate that.
Okay, KPPA update with Mr. Barrow.
Yes, thank you very much. Been presented at both meetings before, so happy to take questions. Just kind of moving on, 2 new items. An additional kudos to Aaron Srop. We had a PPOB meeting this week, and it was a good triumphant of positive feedback. Legislatively, staff, and internally said she did a great job. On the lighter side, I wanted to ask, hey, I was there too, but Aaron really did, talking about the health insurance benefits and just the kudos. Really, I'll sum it up to the individual. I didn't clear approval, but she's a phenomenal director and an example for her staff. And we all know her, but I didn't want to call her out. And Mr. Chair, I did want to touch briefly on the Louisville office. Mike mentioned it before. I want to make sure Rebecca has an additional time to talk before she leaves us. But essentially, the new update, it's the floor plan would be submitted to Housing, Building, Construction for review. That's kind of the normal process. The procurements are very cumbersome. We have to follow all the steps. And we are now back to facilities on that step. The lease has been signed, as I said previously. They're going to let the lessor know. We'll do a final walkthrough, which is typical for most construction. But I did want to just take a minute to ask Rebecca, just kind of go through that process. It's taken 2 executive directors and 1 Rebecca, and she has the history. So if I might just, Mr. Chair, just a couple minutes to her kind of sum up the success. She's essentially getting the project done right before the due date.
Well, thank you, Ryan. I'll be sad not to actually see the office. I told Steve I'll have to come over and have lunch or something so I can actually see it when they move in. So we started this process about 31 months ago. It's been long and arduous. We moved to the building that we were in prior in 2018. That took us about 18 months to get in, and that was frustrating enough. We've doubled that time this time. That it's been difficult. On Christmas Eve of 22 is when the pipe broke, and we finally broke that lease in June of 23 because at that time the restrooms were still on the outside of the building. So that ticked the boxes for real properties, but it was not, it wasn't adequate for us. In February of 23, we had asked them to move, and they said they just didn't have any staff at that time to do the layouts. That's their big issue. It's a small team. Real Properties has been really cooperative and really helpful to us along the way, but their staffing issues have caused a few delays. So then we attempted to change the statutes so that we would not have to go through Real Properties. That was unsuccessful. Let me say that. That was not well supported, and that just didn't work. So again, in February of 24, we went back to Real Properties and said, okay, here we go. And we had gotten some support even from the Secretary of Finance. We'll get this done for you. We'll take care of this, which is terrific. They were very helpful. By April of 24, we had an invitation out. That's the RFP process. All of this falls under KRS 56. Those are the rules. So we had the invitation that went out, and we had respondents by June of that year. We visited those spaces, and then we started the rather arduous process, and this is where they really struggle for staffing of getting the actual layouts and perfecting them, and that was corrections and back and forth, and they had lots of drafters who worked on those pieces. By the end of December, we were still struggling with that. In February, we were ready to do best and final offers. So the layouts were complete, and they send them back to the bidders and say, give us your best and final offer, and it includes exactly what the flooring has to be like, what the quality of what the layouts are going to be, so that they can give a monthly amount that will include the build out. So the build out won't be paid for separately. It'll be part of the lease. March 5th, we had seen all of those, and we made our first selection. Subsequent to that, the bid that we wished for withdrew. So we went back, did some more things. In August, we made another selection. There was some debate back and forth about whether we would have to go to Capital Project Advisory Board, because any leases over $100,000 has to go through them. In the end, we did not, because our lease is under $100,000. Our lease is a little unique in that it has an escalator. So every year it's going to go up by a certain percentage. All of the bidders had this, so I would suspect this is pretty standard for these groups. But our lease is not going to hit $100,000 until at least the 5th year. And depending on how it falls on fiscal years, it may be the 6th fiscal year that it does that. September 12th, we have signed leases. There's a 13-week build out. There has to be reconstruction of stuff that's there, and then construction. I don't think it'll go in 13 weeks. I think that's a sunny estimate. But even if it does, that will be the end of December. So it'd likely be the 1st of January before any staff gets into that building. But I'm really looking forward to this for the investment staff. I think it's terrific. Are there any questions?
A lot of hard work.
it was a lot of hard work back and forth, and we appreciate Real Properties and what they did for us. It was a struggle.
Yes.
Ruben, your hand's up. Do you have a question?
Yeah, I really appreciate the work that was done here, but it was also, I know from the outside, it was quite frustrating to not have the staff together. But looking forward, is should we possibly author a white paper on how better for other agencies to be treated or to be handled in this process? Surely, I mean, Rebecca's a quick learner, but I'm not sure that the properties people are. Should we share that with them, or should we just stay out of it?
I have shared different stuff, and they're very amenable. They recognize the struggles that we've had. A lot of it was unavoidable. It's just staffing issues. It's a small staff. I mean, I could list very specific things. If you heard the things, you would go, yeah, that makes sense. Yep, that makes sense. It's just kind of a unfortunate pile that happened with us. I did share with them a couple of things that I thought different. They're very amenable to those thoughts. They are, however, like us, creatures of statute. They have to do what the statutes say, and a lot of the delay was just the steps that are in place in order to make sure that people don't abuse the system. So I don't know that a white paper would be helpful, but.
Lynn?
Rebecca, I kind of agree with Pruitt, but maybe in a different way. First place, as Ryan will tell you, that this is probably what I've bugged him about the most since he came on board, simply because it eliminated the ability for us to have interns in the investment office. Interns have to be supervised. And, you know, in the business that we're in, growing your own is extremely important. So I'm looking forward to Steve bringing on the first intern. It won't be me, Steve. I promise I won't go back to the school. With that in mind, I don't think that they understood the problems that this causes. And so what alternatives would there be? Could there be alternatives that we could do some of the drafting, or we could do some of the things for them? But, you know, government does move, sometimes slowly, but it does move. And I don't know what else they were doing during this time, but maybe it would be interesting to find out what other work they were doing and were other agencies having similar problems, and what are maybe getting together with some of these people and saying, let's be able to provide the finance cabinet different ways of getting it done, simply because I don't think they really think about how much it hurt us. And it did. So anyway, that's it. And I've got to go get my door.
Any other comments? All right. Rebecca, is that it?
That is it. Thank you.
Okay, Mr. Barrow?
Thank you.
Okay. Thank you very much. Okay, now we are up to the Office of Chief Auditor proposed legislation. I'm going to get us kicked off, and then obviously some other people are going to want to talk, and we're going to make sure that they get their chance. But the reason I put this on the agenda is because this proposed legislation involves both the KPPA agency, and this board is who hires and supervises the executive director of that agency. And it also involves the chief auditor and the office attached thereto. It involves actually reorganize the agency and elevating that position to a higher level. And again, this board is the board that hires and supervises the chief auditor. So I thought this was the appropriate venue to speak on this particular issue. I have both a kind of a macro and a micro view on this particular topic. From a macro level, we all know we have a three-board solution here. The K and the C boards hire their own CEOs, they hire their own legal counsel, they control their own investments. And then the KPPA board, which is the board we sit on here today. This is the board that hires, as I mentioned earlier, the executive director and the internal auditor and supervises both. So I think anytime that changes to the agency or changes to an office, especially when something is being reorganized in a manner when the agency didn't ask for the reorganization and that it hasn't been discussed at this level, it needs to be discussed at this level, because I think when you have a 3-board solution and only one board proposes a change, and the expectation is the agency helped them with that change when the other 2 boards haven't even opined on the issue, I think that really creates a situation that kind of becomes untenable. The 3-board solution, at least in my view, is about cooperation. And I think if we get out of that model, I think we really are going down a path that I don't really see how we can continue. And I think if the shoe was on the other foot, and I'm comfortable saying this, and I think if the K board was pushing some sort of change to the agency that the C board didn't agree with, I think they would be right here, and rightfully so, voicing their opinion on that change. So that's my macro level of the situation. I just think that this board is the appropriate board to discuss those types of things and not the individual boards. Zooming in on the individual issue, and of course, Ed had some letters in the board books. You know, this appears to be a situation where the C board wants to put some different audit procedures in place. I'm completely fine with that. It makes sense. The issue I have is jumping directly to what amounts to a forced reorganization of the agency when other solutions, it's my understanding, have been suggested. And the fact that the C board itself has put together an ad hoc committee that it's my understanding hasn't even met yet. And despite that, we're already jumping up to a legislation issue to try to get statutory change to reorganize the organization. In an email that Ed and I bounced back and forth, Ed said he thought that it was appropriate for the C board to speak on this because he thought only they had a fiduciary duty. I don't agree with that. All 8 of us that are on this board have fiduciary duties as a result of the statute that puts us on our respective boards. And then 61-505-12A requires all of us on the KPPA board to act in a manner, quote, that he or she honestly believes to be in the best interest of KRS and CERS. So I reject the idea that somehow we lose our fiduciary duties and we can just do whatever we want just because we're on the KPPA board and not the KRS board. And the second point he makes in the email, and he's exactly right, the internal auditor and the executive director are tasked in statute to work with the K and the C CEOs. That's clearly spelled out, but I think the appropriate word or the pertinent word in there is cooperatively. And I think if you have a situation where there's disagreement, I don't think we can just devolve into a place where one side says, well, we're just going to do it anyway, and we expect the agency to help us out with this endeavor. So I'm against the reorganization. I think we have a different solution in place that the agency has proposed. I think that at least should be given a shot before we start trying to reorganize the agency for which we have no direct control. And those are my comments on the situation. And who else would like to speak?
I will address some of what you're referring to, Keith. And I'm glad you brought up the statute because that's exactly what I wanted to reference as well. You know, if you haven't taken the time to read the 233 pages of 484, I can certainly understand that one. However, the 8 pages of 61.505 as it relates to KPPA is exactly pertinent. I'm going to address some of those issues, and then I'm going to let Ed address why we, as the C Board, are in the position that we're in. I'm not going to read the whole thing to you, obviously, but I am going to read the full portions of the different sections that I think are pertinent. 61.505 starts out with, there is created an 8-member Kentucky Public Pension Authority whose purpose shall be administered and operate a single personnel system for staffing needs of the Kentucky retirement system and the county employee retirement system. A system of accounting that is developed by the authority for the Kentucky retirement system and the county employee retirement system. And C, day-to-day administrative needs of the Kentucky retirement system and the county employee retirement system, including but not limited to the promulgation of administrative regulations as the authority or on behalf of the Kentucky retirement system and the county employee retirement system, individually or collectively, provided such regulations are not inconsistent with provisions of the section KRS 16.505. Item I, which is the pertinent one here, other tasks or duties as directed solely or jointly by the boards of the Kentucky retirement systems or the county employee retirement systems, which speaks directly to the issue that we're facing currently. But I want to just add, you referenced section 12, item 3, with regard to the responsibility of the board members of KPPA. You know, obviously, number one is to operate in good faith. Number two, on an informal basis, or excuse me, on an informed basis. But three that you referenced, you left out the last two words. In a manner he or she honestly believes to be in the best interest of the county employee retirement system and the Kentucky retirement systems as applicable. The issue that is driving our situation is only applicable to the C system. And to your comment with regard to if this was an issue that the K system was bringing, we would be in full support, because we fully support the full independence of both the K board and the C board, and the fact that the KPPA board is there to serve each of those systems. So with that, I'm going to let Ed kind of address the issues that are driving what was brought to our attention in the last 4 or 5 months.
Thank you, Lyle, and thank you, Mr. Chair, for the comments that you made pertaining to this issue. You and I have always had and will continue to have a very good working relationship. We just disagree on this issue. I'm going to focus on the why we want this change, and 2 themes just come to the top. One is transparency, and the other is independence. Auditor Ball made 2 referrals to the CERS board on May 14th and July 22nd of this year, from the Barron County Fiscal Court and from the Clay County Fiscal Court. And basically, the referral said the pension payments don't match payroll. And let us know what you're going to do to address the issues that we have presented to you. The first thing that we did was to reach out to the chief auditor and have her look at all of the APA audits that had been done since separation. So since 2021, we looked at the fiscal court, the county clerk's office, and the sheriff's audits that the APA had done since that time. We found that there were several dozen that need to be followed up on, because pension payments may not, in fact, match payroll. We have over 1,100 employers in our system. What the APA does is they audit 360 of them. So they audit approximately 1/3 of our total employer number. Yet, there were several dozen that we feel we need to follow up on. In 2018, the chief auditor identified employer audits as the single largest risk in this agency. She even developed a plan that would have every employer audited on a 5-year rotating basis. Now, I don't know why that plan was never implemented. Sometimes good intentions and good plans don't get executed, but that plan was never implemented. It wasn't until I had received the referrals from the state auditor and spoke with management about them, did the idea of, Keith, what you mentioned as the alternative plan start to emerge. And that was to have ERSI hire a team that would then be responsible for doing the employer audits. Now, ERSI does great work, but auditors need to audit. And the current system just isn't very effective. And I'm going to keep it at a high level, but we could get into granular detail about the statements that I've made thus far. All of those statements go to transparency. The transparency that we feel as the CERS board that we owe to our members. Now I want to speak to independence. One of two statements have to be true. Either since 2018, the risk associated with employer audits has abated, so it's no longer a high risk. And I don't think that that's actually what has occurred because, again, we found several dozen that need to be followed up on. And as we looked at those several dozen, a number of them had the same finding for multiple consecutive years. Barron County, the same finding 2 years in a row. Clay County, the same finding for 3 years in a row. And nothing had been done to address it. More likely, the statement that is true is this: the chief auditor still doesn't have the independence that she needs to mitigate agency risk. We had a risk assessment that was done, and not a single item was identified as a high risk. Now, I've been doing risk mitigation for over 30 years. In large organizations and small. I've never seen, and I've made this comment publicly in a public meeting, I had never seen a risk assessment that had not a single high-risk item. Had employer audits been flagged as high risk, it would have received our attention prior to the referral that we received from the APA. And again, we're only dealing in that instance with 1/3 of our employers. So, Mr. Chair, you're absolutely correct. We stood up an ad hoc committee, and that ad hoc committee is going to do work around this issue. But we feel as a board, and the board voted to move forward with this. So it's not as though we're waiting for the committee to make a determination. The board has voted. And we're going to ensure our members that there is adequate transparency for everything that happens in this organization, and that our auditor has the requisite amount of independence that's needed to ensure that. I appreciate the opportunity to speak, Mr. Chair. Those are the only comments I have.
Ed, I appreciate it. I just want to add one thing. We've all been sitting on this board, some of us for a lot longer than the last 4 years of separation. By the payroll reports and the contribution rates or contribution amounts not matching, we are severely impacting and opening ourselves up to liability from the standpoint of, do we have retirees that have or are about to retire that earned a better pension than what they're going to be calculated at? Do we have employers out there that are paying more than they need to because other employers aren't paying their fair share? Or are they overpaying? You know, in the last, since 2008, we have spent as an organization, both KRS, KPPA, K System, C System, over $26 million in outside legal counsel. We can't continue to open ourselves up like this. So, you know, that is the driving, or one of the driving issues for me anyway, as to why we need to ensure transparency, ensure independence, so that there's no questions. We've seen our transparency and our transparency questioned in court. We've seen our transparency questioned at the legislative level. Once you lose that reputation that you're above board and being transparent, it is awfully hard to go back and recreate it. And we're, you know, tasked now with the situation that these referrals that Ed's referring to, these weren't the only times that the APA has referred these issues to us. This is just the first time that we, the C Board, were made aware of it. So with that, I'll, you know, close up. Thanks, Keith.
Yes, sir. Bill?
Thank you, Chair. I've spent a lot of time thinking about appropriate comments, and I'm afraid I've got 2 pages, so please bear with me. So this issue has multiple layers to it, but after asking questions, it to me comes back to how to address a question of accurate CERS employer reporting, and what's the correct process to evaluate and then implement an action plan. So it's caused a lot of confusion and angst that this one option has been developed and now put into motion. So the creation of the Office of Chief Auditor has been presented as a risk management enhancement and to make the position a part of KPPA executive team. It should be noted that the KPP internal auditor already compiles the risk profile in the organization each year. So after this was proposed and questions were raised, the comments were made that this action was to transfer duties of the KPPA employer reporting staff to a newly created chief auditor position and then audit all 1,200 CERS employers on a rotating basis every 5 years. And as presented to the Auditor of Public Accounts, CERS created an ad hoc committee to, quote, oversee the implementation of this reorganization. However, when the ad hoc committee was presented to the CERS board, it was to evaluate the best approach to address the issue. I have concerns on several points related to the proposal of this chief auditor option. My experience with internal audit section is in both the private sector and local government is to have internal audit off to the side of the reporting structure so they'll have independence and not have a perceived conflict of interest when auditing the different functions of the organization. If the auditor is part of the executive management team, they would be participating in the direction and design of procedures and might be challenged to appear unbiased. And the legislature already reorganized the KPPA internal auditor to report to the audit committee to address any perceived pressure and to clarify their independence. So this reorganization seems to diminish that independence in my eyes. Second is how to explore, investigate, and evaluate options to address an issue is another point of discussion. KPPA is the administrator to support the CRS system, and to look to KPPA would be the first option. KPPA has an employer reporting, compliance, and education section who addresses late reporting, underreporting, and education. And I'd put the emphasis on the word education. They have a plan to address CERS's concerns, and in the past, incidents of underreporting have entailed educating the employer on proper handling and assisting them on accurate reporting. And this education and assistance requires expertise and experience, traits that the employer reporting staff possess. This chief auditor approach almost assumes that you're wrong until there's 100% audit is completed to show that you're right. And I think that spends a significant amount of administrative overhead to find a few $1,000s of late remittance. As referred earlier, CRS requested the audit area to review 4 years of every audit the Auditor of Public Accounts has available on CRS members. And so 986 audits were reviewed. And they found 4 employers with underreporting. 9 instances, but 4 reporters. That's less than 1%. And so far, it's resulted in $6,000 of late penalties. So it doesn't appear to be millions of dollar problem as presented. So before going forward with a proposal, different ideas and options are usually explored and vetted. The employer reporting team has an approach, but these plans, actions, and ideas were not presented to the CRS board to evaluate when the chief auditor, the 1,200 audits option was presented. And there may be other options and approaches, requesting retirement data be included in the entity's annual audit sampling, or a certification of accuracy, or additional reporting targeted to repeat problem areas. The process of evaluation of options before implementation is just good business practice. So allowing the board to hear alternate options allows them to be fully informed when making a board decision. So I see going forward with this proposal now as being premature. Thank you.
Mr. Chair, could I speak to a couple of things that were just said?
Yeah, we've got Lynn and Lyle, but yeah, go ahead. If you want to.
No, please.
Okay, all right, Lynn, go ahead.
Thank you, Keith. And thank you for what you said. Thank you, Ed, and thank you, Bill. I have been on the KRS board for, I think, 5 years now, and chairman of KRS and on the KPPA board. It has been my understanding from the very beginning that we are independent boards, KRS and CRS, and responsible for, as was said earlier, really the investments. Neither CERS or KRS has an audit staff, nor do we have any direct authority over any KPPA employee, only, in this case, John and Ed, who report to the CERS and KRS boards. So that's one of the things. So it seems to me that any kind of decision that looks at problems like what Lyle was saying and this kind of thing needs to be brought together so that we can look at it. Maybe KRS has similar issues, but things that we need to do to work cooperative together. I will say, when I saw this letter dated November 22nd, and today is November 25th, it kind of stunned me that there was a lack of cooperation in sending a letter to the auditors before KRS or KPPA ever had a chance at this. So I think Bill talked about how we need to look at it. I understand that APA does these things. Maybe what we need to do is talk to the APA and ask them if we could work, because if they're doing the work now, and they seem to be doing a decent job, if it's less than 1%, how can we improve that? Do they need to have some AI thing that comes in and looks at these reports? I mean, things like that. But that's over there, independent with APA. And I think that they, over the years, or have a process of doing it. Then do we need a better process when it comes over? Does it need to go into our administrative areas to look at these things where we can not only look at it and find it, but educate and make sure that the agencies that are turning these things over have a process? Maybe it used to be done by Joe and now it's done by Sarah, and Sarah missed a step. There are different things that we need to do to make sure that the process is right, but it's done right now in APA. And it seems to me that based on the statistics that we've had, there is no glaring problem there. I also think that we need to understand, and I think Bill again clarified this, the position of the internal audit is not a policy position. And we don't want it to be a policy position because of the responsibilities of the audit. So I think that needs to be clarified also. So what I'd like to do, and I'm not sure exactly at the right time, but I've thought about this since I saw the letter dated the 22nd, that I would like to make a motion that the KPPA board publicly opposed the CERS efforts to reorganize KPPA, and that moving forward, we would work together on any particular situation to make sure that our agencies serve our members in the best manner. So there's a motion for you, Mr. Chair.
Have a motion, and is there a second?
I'll second that.
All right, so we're up to discussion. Lyle, you got your hand up. And Ed's next.
I'm going to address a few things. You know, numbers are an interesting thing, and they can be spun a number of ways. The first thing I want to address is the issue of the 1%. As Ed pointed out, we have over 1,200 employers in our system. The auditor of public accounts has a responsibility of auditing less than a third of those. Of the, I think, 900 odd audits that Bill alluded to, I will point out over 400 of them for the 2024 year have not been uploaded yet. And of the ones that have been identified as either a certain problem or a probable problem is 79, not 2 or 3. The third thing that I would like to point out is this issue was brought up and identified in 2018. Since that point in time, there have been 0 CERS employer audits conducted. 0. Comment was made in a meeting that, well, you know, these issues will identify themselves when audits are presented and it's published in the paper. You know, having been in office for 16 years, I can assure you things like that don't make the local papers that are generally set up to sell advertising. And even if they are, they're referenced for somebody that wants to look at the audit to come in and get them, not as a, you have this problem and you underfunded your pension or overfunded your pension or didn't pay payroll taxes like you should have. Those issues are certainly identified in the audits, but they're not necessarily identified in what is published in the paper. So in that same time period, it took the legislature to pass a bill requiring the K system to audit, and I can't remember the number, either 5 or 8 employers per year, something to that effect. But they were silent on the C system because it is a separate system. And I'll go back to the very thing that I pointed out earlier. It says in the enabling statute specifically, other tasks or duties as directed solely or jointly by the boards of the Kentucky Retirement System or the County Employee Retirement System. If the K system wants ERSI to handle their employers, that's fine. That's your business. The C system wants an additional level of transparency, and since there are over 1,300 of them, a concerted effort to get those done in a timely manner. So with that, Ed,
You covered a lot of what I wanted to say. I just wanted to add one more point about the current system not really working as one might hope. In the most recent audit committee meeting, there was a report that is there every quarter on tips that come in that in this instance, the tip that I'm referring to was a tip that came in that an employer's pension payments did not match payroll, and that was included in the quarterly report. The investigator spoke to it, gave the process that it typically then goes to ERSI. ERSI then refers it on to legal, and it's handled. Well, that tip was made in 2022, and the status of that tip was it's being investigated by legal. 3 years later.
Is that it, Ed?
That's it. Thank you, sir.
Okay. Just let me say something briefly here, and then we're coming to
Yes,
you.
sir.
And Lyle,
That'd
you
be
made
fine.
the comment. You made the comment, and I believe you 100%. You said if the K board came up with an idea with the shoe on the other foot, you guys would support us, and I think you would. I don't think you're. I think you're being 100% truthful about that. The difference being, we would never jump to straight to we've got to reorg the agency and to get this accomplished. And that's listen, I'm for you. If there's a problem here, this problem needs to be fixed. I don't want the C system to get shorted 1 cent, and I don't want any employer to overpay by 1 cent. All those things need to be done, and they need to be fixed. And if there is a problem, then we have the people to fix it. That's my only point. And I think there was a plan put together, and Rebecca's here, so I think she can speak to it, to do this. And I think that plan needs to be given a shot, and to jump straight to a reorganization of an agency, as I said earlier, that didn't ask to be reorganized, I just think is the wrong path. I'm for you fixing whatever problem you think is there. I just think we're jumping a couple steps. Pruitt?
Two things. One, your comments and others are and don't seem to be understood by Ed. We on the KPPA board are all, Ed, all fiduciaries. You have written that we are not fiduciaries for both plans. That is totally incorrect. We are fiduciaries. And as Keith pointed out, we want the best, the most accurate, and the most legal for both plans. And with that said, I'd like to call this motion for a vote.
sorry, any further comments during discussion? Okay, Bill?
You're muted,
You're
Bill.
on, you're on mute, Bill.
Well, I guess I'm just agreeing with your statement, Keith, that as I said, this is premature. We don't want to shoot, ready, aim at a problem. We want to go through the process correctly. I'm not sure that talking to our constituents, that they understood the impact of the request of the reorg of this position, that it would entail 100% audits every 5 years.
It was made perfectly clear to them.
Well, it's interesting. When I talked to them, they were surprised to hear that. So, you know, that's my point of comment. And so I just feel it's premature. I think KPPA is the administrator, and if CRS is not satisfied with their approach, that we need to work together to get their approach to a level that meets your concerns. So thank you.
Lynn?
I just was wondering if Vicki could, if she has written down enough that she could read what the motion would be.
Yes, you made a motion that KPPA publicly oppose the reorganization of KPPA as set forth by the CERS board.
Thank you. So it would be a yes if you oppose and a no if you don't. Is that correct?
Correct.
Okay, thank you.
Further discussion? Sherry, let's do a roll call vote.
Yes, sir. Mr. Piercy,
Yes.
Dr. Carver, Are you with
Dr. Carver?
Sorry, I didn't realize I was muted. No.
Mr. Cheatham,
No.
Ms. Hampton,
Yes.
Mr. Lane,
Yes.
Mr. O'Mara,
I did not support this at the CRS vote, so I have to vote yes.
and Mr. Summers.
Yes.
Thank you. That's 5 yeses and 2 noes, Mr. Piercy.
Okay. So 5 yeses and 2 noes, the motion is adopted. Appreciate the discussion. Always open to continue it. Here's the best news of the day after that. We don't need a closed session. I talked to Michael on Tuesday, and he told me that we didn't need it. Lynn, you have something?
Just wanted to know that this is not saying no to further action by CERS and communication with KRS to get the problem that they perceive fixed.
Yeah, correct. Okay. Back to the closed session. We don't need it unless someone just wants to jump up and down and say, no, they really need to do it. And looks like that's a no. So with that being said, folks, we've come to the end of our agenda. Appreciate your attendance today, and we are adjourned.
Thank you very much.